the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I'm really delighted about today's guest, Wanis Ruiz, and he's based out of Canada. And he's going to talk to us all about communication and speech. And he gives presentations to universities, MBA programs. We're going to discuss the secrets of communication, and I'm really happy to have him on to discuss his thoughts. Ivan, welcome.
Thank you so much. And it is a pleasure to be here. As we talked earlier before we started recording, I have a bit of a background as, I guess, a supplementary in medicine, working as a personal assistant for various doctors. And I love research into medicine because I come from a family of doctors. So I'm super excited to talk about some random communication stuff for all you medical experts.
Yeah. And briefly, I know we started a little bit late, but we introduced like one or two sentence one-liner, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Sure. Basically, I'll tell you what, let me tell you three things. I'll do the two truths and a lie. I'm going to tell you three things about myself that are hard to believe. You tell me which one you think is a lie, okay? So number one, I teach at 5 different universities. Number 2, I met Leonardo DiCaprio. Number 3, professional wrestling is where I draw my communication tactic. Which one do you think is a lie?
Probably the first, DiCaprio and the wrestling. I would assume the first one is probably you teach at 5 different programs or universities.
You know what? You are an excellent lie detector, my friend, because that is true. I actually teach at 7. I thought I was going to be really sneaky. I teach at various universities across not only Canada, but the United States, including Georgia Tech and Texas Tech is just a couple of them.
Yeah. Excellent. And we'll talk about your client avatar. Who do you serve? Who comes to you? What do they come to you for? And how do you help clients?
I always say I'm a bit of a hired gun. So a lot of what I teach in terms of communications is tactics based. I think that we have enough ideas in the world. There's enough ideas. What there isn't enough of is a translation of ideas into tactics. For example, you might hear, and sometimes in medical schools, we give a very surface level kind of training into really like listening to patients. And they say it's important to establish rapport and really try and connect with your patient. And you're like, no, okay, but that's just an idea. How do you do that? What's the tactics behind it? When I work with organizations from engineering, I've worked with a couple of medical associations as well, lots of business schools, and a lot of finance. I work a lot in finance. I teach tactics that are relevant across fields because there are certain communication tactics you can use, and we'll talk about some that, irrespective of your field, can help to like de-escalate someone, to help to increase customer satisfaction, can help to make someone feel heard even when you can't solve their problem. And you know this, sometimes a patient will walk in and the only thing you can say is come back in a week, we have to see. And how do you make sure that even though they didn't get a prescription, they didn't get like a resolution, they still walk out feeling satisfied? That's the kind of things I teach, but with tactics.
Interesting. And so the follow-up question I have for you is, because you help when people come to you to help with their communication,
yes,
what answers are they seeking? What problems are they looking to solve?
There's a few kind of big trends. Number one is making complex ideas simple. If we're going to, hey, how do you summarize some like research that you've seen in whether it's in orthopedics and oncology to a patient who doesn't know anything, or maybe spent a little bit of time on Google? So simplifying complexity. The other one is how to be engaging when you speak. Because if we're honest, every listener right now, the millions around the world, probably are on their laptop, looking at their cell phone, washing the dishes. How can you make it so it's hard for people to look away? And the third thing that I really am a big advocate for is I believe there's an epidemic of boredom in this world. Dude, there is so much boredom, right? Have you ever been to a conference and no matter how interesting it was, did not feel bored? Hey, we got 3 days of lectures, 8-hour-long days, and you can talk to someone in the last 20 minutes during the cocktail hour, but then you're exhausted. So I'm a big advocate in creating engagement and interaction as the fundamental way we create versus a lecture style.
And what's interesting is we'll talk about boredom and why people forget you and why are so many
Sure.
messages bored. But what did you learn? Because we were talking earlier on in the green room about you worked with actually a physician. What did you learn about the secrets of communication, particularly for doctors that are listening, or dentists, or pharmacists, healthcare workers?
Certainly. One of the aspects, there's a couple of different aspects of medical communication. And for many years, I was the personal assistant when I was in my early 20s to a gentleman named Bob Willard, Dr. Bob Willard, who was the head of family practice at the University of British Columbia. And he was an advocate for what was called relationship-based care. And he would travel around the world and he would lecture on behalf of the World Health Organization, trying to become an advocate of relationship-based care for a couple of reasons. Let me give you the two big ones. Number one, the research into relationship-based care, which is a real thing. You can all look it up. Go on PubMed and look it up. The research into relationship-based care showed a dramatic effect on reduction of all-cause mortality and morbidity in patient outcomes. The second reason, and let me give you a crazy anecdote, okay? Irrespective of how you feel about naturopathic medicine, okay? The second reason was because Bob was also an advocate for, listen, there is a reason why we are losing the fight on actual treatment that affects people. There's a reason why people are going to all these woo. It's because they're better communicators than we are. And I've worked with a bunch of different associations, and I actually worked with a chiropractic association, for example. And they said, I have patients that come and see me and left their doctors because their doctor said that I was bunk. And they just didn't like being told that. I'll give you another really good example, okay? I had a friend of mine, and she had chronic back pain. So she goes to her GP, and the GP is like, there's nothing really we can do. Physio, exercise. I'm not gonna give you any pills or anything. I'm not gonna give you painkillers. Rational thing to do, makes sense. Most back pain, there's not a lot we can do. Resolves over time with stretching, physio, etc. She went to a naturopath because she didn't like that answer. And I talked to her afterward, and she said, I was like, how was it? It was amazing. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, I'm going back for sure. And I was like, what happened? What did he say? And she's nothing. He basically told me the same thing my GP did. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, but he really listened to me. And that was it. And I'm like, so that was it? She's like, yeah, there's nothing you can do, but he just really took the time to listen to me. So I'm very happy. I'm probably going to go back to him.
Interesting.
Yes. And so from those two experiences, from working with Bob in relationship care and seeing the evidence behind it, and from hearing these kind of anecdotal examples, I really wanted to create some tactics that physicians can use with their patients. So that even when you say, come back and see me in a month, there's nothing I can do, they're going to feel heard and valued.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Interesting. And yeah, because one thing is, what is one communication tip that listeners can take away that works for you in the boardroom and on the stage that healthcare practitioners or people and business owners can use to better get to their patients or customers or their clients?
I'm going to answer that question because it's very important, right? You want to have that. Is there that one thing that we can quickly apply? Because I don't want to take a 6-month course, right, to learn how to do something. Yvonne, give me something that I can use after this podcast. Listen to the end, everyone. Listen to the end. We should save it to the end so they have to listen to the end. No, just kidding. But is there something that we can use that we can quickly use for both talking with patients and talking with customers? The answer is yes, and I'm going to give it to you in just a moment. But before I do that, Chris, for you, what's your go-to? I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute. What's your go-to communication tip? Do you have one? What's your secret? What's something that you find is always effective?
One thing is I let the patient or client talk. The problem is when you have someone that is very enthusiastic and they love to talk, then you have to find polite ways to move the conversation along. But I like to let them hear where they're coming from to make them feel heard and understood.
And first of all, bravo to you for that. Because if you're like me, the hardest part is sitting and listening when you already know the answer. And you have 9 other patients, and then you get someone and you're like, and you want to be efficient, but you also want to make them feel heard. And that balance is hard, right? Trying to find that balance. But so funny enough, there's a very interesting study, and it was done in 1980 something and then replicated again. It's you can ask me later. I'll send you the references. And it was on patient satisfaction with GPs. And here's what they did. It was very interesting that you brought this up. And this relates to my tactic. They had 2 arms. Arm 1, GP, do what you normally do. Arm 2, GP, let the patient talk till they're done. And I can see by the look in your face, like, oh God, that must have been brutal. So here's what they found, okay? On average, the average GP, how quickly do you think they interrupted a patient when they just did what they normally did? What do you think? How long do you take?
It depends on the practitioner. If you have a figure of family practice, they would tend to let the patient talk a little bit more. So I would say 30 seconds. Whereas if you have a surgeon or someone who's a little bit more blunt, they'd probably give them 10 seconds or so.
Chris, this is why you got to listen to this podcast all the time. So the median time was around 10 seconds. So you're very on. You know what? And in post interviews, because they did qualitative interviews afterwards, the doctor, I'm trying to be efficient. I already knew I wanted to delve quicker into something they said. They were trying to help. Now, here's the next question. In the other arm, where they asked the patients to talk until they were done. And the doctor just had to sit there. How long do you think the patients talked for?
Probably, I would say another 20 seconds or so.
92 seconds was the median time.
Interesting.
92 seconds. After around 92 seconds, up until the 80th percentile were done. There was a few outliers that would talk for 5 minutes. But then they asked those doctors, how long do you think those people talked for? And they all were like, at least 10 minutes. Like all of them were like, that was so long. I felt like I was just sitting there going crazy. Now, here's where it actually has the crazy moment. And this relates to the naturopath example I gave you below. They did a qualitative study on the patients afterward and said, rate the quality of care when they controlled for prescription.
Interesting.
So in both arms, come back and see me in a week. In both arms, here's a Tylenol. In both arms, okay, here's a prescription for an ARB or something like that. Some hypertension drug, right?
Wow.
In the arm where the doctors were allowed to do whatever they wanted, about 50-50 satisfaction. Half the patients said it was good, half the patients said it was bad. In the arm where the patients were allowed to talk until they were done, about 80% rated a high quality of care. And how that relates to business owners beyond medicine, because as doctors, we are, of course, business owners. Like a lot of people don't realize that. If you run your own clinic, you're a business owner. You're not just a doctor. That is recurring, returning clients. So I know you asked me about a tactic, and here it is. Number 1, if you have the patience to do, you let someone talk till they're done. But here's where the magic comes in, my friend. And I see in your smile, like if the patience is the hardest part, I suffer from it too. But here's where the magic comes in. And this is tactics actually that come more from my research into police interrogation. When someone is done, in more than one sentence, if you say it's one sentence, it looks like lip service. In more than one sentence, repeat back and expand on what they said. And then here's what will happen. They'll start going like this. Yep. Yes. Yes. And you're starting with agreement.
Wow. So moving on, I wish we had a little bit more time.
You know what? I'm happy to come back. Everyone do this. All the listening audience in the comments, please say, bring Yvonne back. We want to learn more. Demand it. And I'll come back. How's that sound? Let's get some comments.
All right. The next question I have is, because a lot of people are this new technology, artificial intelligence. So how is artificial intelligence changing the way we communicate with our patients, our clients, our audiences, etc.?
Certainly. It's a very good question, right? Because in a world of AI where, let's be real, we're all using it, not just patients, but doctors. And we are getting some interesting evidence that we can't fully trust yet, that AI is doing quite a good job at diagnosis. It's right now it's under very controlled conditions. Most of the research is under like very controlled conditions, and it's also in a lot of hypothetical, so it's not in real practice to the best of my knowledge. Here's something scary to think about. Number one, if you think about it, and you've dealt with this, every doctor and dentist, every medical practitioner has dealt with this. What information can't you find in seconds on Google? Every patient comes in, I did some research, and there's a party that's, no, here we go. I see it in your face. So that's one part. But in a world where more and more technical tasks are being automated through AI, what is the value that anyone brings? What is the value you bring? Because think about it. It's not your knowledge and it's not your technical abilities. So what is the value of the individual in that future world? I believe that the competitive advantage of the future, because it's always been a competitive advantage, is going to be your ability to connect, convince, and inspire.
Yeah.
Here, and let me give you a really good example. Why is it that this person who's dedicated 30 years of his life to like whatever research, people are like, oh, they're just doing it for the money. Even though if you've anyone listening who's a researcher, there's no money in research. There's none. There's not a rich researcher that in this world. There's a researcher who every year is struggling to get like funding from rich people. Okay. But they're just in it for the money. But some dude in his car telling you to drink your own pee, you're like, you know what? Maybe I should try that. Why? It's because they have an ability to convince and connect. Whereas the researcher will rely on the evidence. And a researcher will never say, a really good scientist, you're this way. I guarantee you're this way. A patient will be like, is it this or this? You will never be like, it's that. You'll be like, based on what I know, the best thing I can say. And the second you say that, they're like, okay, you're just doing it for the money. But then I'll go on YouTube and the guy's, it's steroids. And you're like, yes, okay, that's what I need. Thank you for that answer. And I'll give you a non-medical example, okay? And this is why communication is so important in the future. Forget medicine. Chris, you look like you and I are roughly the same age. Do you remember the early 2000s? That magical time, the early 2000s?
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, I remember going to try and buy an MP3 player. 32 megabyte MP3 at 32 megabyte. Okay. And I remember going to the store. It was called Future Shop. And it's like where you go. It's like Best Buy. It's like where you go to buy it. And I go into the store and it's like, hi there. I would like to put my music onto the digital thing. Because at the time I didn't know the words for it. I would like to make my music from CDs go into the thing where it's just, I could just play my music. And the guy's like, okay, how much data is it? And I'm like, I don't know. And I have like maybe 10 CDs. I don't know, maybe 100 songs. It depends on how much songs there's. So you tell me. I just want my 100 songs on the thing. And the guy's like, we could give you a 32 megabyte, but you might want to do a 64. And I was like, what's the difference? He's like, the amount of storage. Okay, how much to store this music? Well, it depends. And I'm like, and we got into this circular thing. And I left without an MP3 player. And then a few years later, one of the greatest ads of all time that made it easy was 1,000 songs in your pocket. And to this day, when I ask people, what's the difference between an MP3 player and an iPod? No one says there's no difference. They're the same thing. And this is why the future of communication is so important, because your ability to connect, convince, and inspire is going to be what keeps people coming back to you.
Wow. Yeah, really fascinating. I love that. And so bring it on. So, you know, obviously you have honed a lot of your public speaking skills, and they can tell from your pauses and your intonation. And so talk about, were you always a good public speaker, or did you have to develop it? Talk about the audience that are introverts or people that want to become public speakers.
Are you an introvert?
I am introverted, yes.
Yet and still, I guarantee, depending on who you're around, you're probably quite talkative. Most of us are introverted or extroverted depending on the situation.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you probably have like family members or like close friends where you're like, da, 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 da. I am the quiet one in my family, believe it or not. So it is a valid question though. Can you learn to be a good communicator if you're not inherently extroverted? And the answer is yes. I believe that being charismatic, I believe that being a good communicator, these kind of like esoteric, like soft terms we use, charismatic and that kind of stuff, is simply a series of physical actions you can practice.
Interesting.
I believe it's physical actions you can practice the way you practice kicking a ball. Let me ask you this, and this is why I experienced the thing. Your first podcast to this podcast, how much has it changed?
It's probably changed quite dramatically, and incorporating new elements, especially storytelling, examples. And so what really fascinating. We'll have to have you on a future episode. How can people connect with you? And I know you wrote a book and contact you, connect with you, and how can they do that?
I think the best way will be writing comments in the whatever podcast, wherever you're listening to this, saying, I demand more Yvonne. So just put that in those comments so Chris has me back. Good for you for practicing, because even though you're an introvert, you improved. So that means we all can, right?
Yeah.
And with that being said, I'm Public Speaking Lab everywhere. So on LinkedIn, look for Public Speaking Lab. On Instagram, Public Speaking Lab. And the book is called End Boring, a tactical approach to communication.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for coming on. And I really enjoyed this engaging conversation, and keep up the great work.
It's been my pleasure. And thanks for everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure being on the podcast. Thank you.